What are my top 10 fantasy football quarterbacks in 2019? Make sure to stay tuned to find out. What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports back, you guys, with another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about who my top 10 quarterbacks are going into the NFL season for 2019 in fantasy football. Now, before I begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I upload NFL videos and NFL content daily. Now, these are my top 10 quarterbacks for fantasy football in 2019, and this list isn't really different from all of the other videos that I've watched from all the other guys who have been doing these top 10 quarterbacks of fantasy football in 2019, and the only thing different is really one quarterback on here, and pretty much my list is the same. Maybe the rankings that I have these guys ordered is different, but other than that, this list isn't really different from all the others that I've watched. So, let's start. So, at number 10, you're going to see the list of all the quarterbacks that I have ranked. At number 10, I have Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield was a guy who I didn't really see pop up in a lot of these videos that I watched. And the reason why I have Baker Mayfield at number 10, 3,725 passing yards. He had 28 passing touchdowns, which I believe was the rookie record for passing touchdowns for a rookie, and 14 interceptions. So when we look at Baker Mayfield, I have him at number 10 because he has Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry to throw to. That's arguably one of the best wide receiving duos, if not the best wide receiving duos in the NFL, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. Jarvis Landry is probably a top 15 wide receiver, arguably maybe a top 10 wide receiver from a few people out there. And then you got Odell Beckham, who is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. So that's one of the best wide receiving duos there. Then you also have guys like Rashad Higgins and Antonio Callaway. Those guys are a couple of sleepers there. Then you got tight end David Njoku. So you also got a very improved offensive line for the Cleveland Browns. So Baker Mayfield, he has an improved offensive line, which is going to give him more time to throw. And he has a daily arsenal of wide receivers and tight ends to throw to. So that should improve Baker Mayfield's numbers from a fantasy football standpoint. And I think we could say Baker Mayfield ended up throwing 40 touchdown passes this season, since look at what he has to throw to. You got Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Rashad Higgins, and Antonio Callaway. So he has a lot of weapons. So I wouldn't be surprised if Baker Mayfield ends up throwing for 40 touchdowns. But to be realistic, I think a realistic range for him, touchdown-wise, would be 35. And I think he's going to end up putting up some solid and very good fantasy numbers this season. At number 9, I have Russell Wilson. Now, a lot of people have Russell Wilson ranked higher than what I have him, but I have him ranked at number 9 simply for the fact that he has a lot of young wide receivers now to work with, other than Tyler Lockett, which is pretty much the most experienced wide receiver that he has. You got DK Metcalf, and you got a couple of other inexperienced wide receivers there. So when you have rookie wide receivers and young wide receivers, they're normally really, really inconsistent, and normally they don't start really having a big impact in the offense until around the midway point of the NFL season, so around week 8. So I think that right there alone is kind of going to set Russell Wilson back from a fantasy football standpoint. He might struggle a little bit because of the inexperience that he has at the wide receiver position, other from Tyler Lockett, for a couple of weeks. So that's why I have him kind of a little bit down the bottom of this list at number 9, because these rookie wide receivers or these young wide receivers, they're very, very inconsistent, and it only takes them a couple of weeks to start getting more targets and more involved in the offense. But I think DK Metcalf will kind of emerge earlier than all the other wide receivers that they have. I'll probably give him until like week 5, but I think Russell Wilson is kind of going to get a little bit hindered in the passing game with these young wide receivers. So that's why I have him at number 9. At number 8, I have Ben Roethlisberger. Now, Ben Roethlisberger, last season, he led the NFL in passing yards, 5,129 passing yards, had 34 touchdowns passing and 16 interceptions. Now, Ben Roethlisberger always puts up solid stats as a fantasy football quarterback. He is a quarterback who I will look to draft. I look to draft more aggressive quarterbacks, more quarterbacks who tend to take more chances than others. And Ben Roethlisberger is definitely one of those guys. He has a very solid offensive line, and you got Juju Smith-Schuster as your number one wide receiver. But a big question is the number two wide receiver position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Me being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, it's really intriguing to see who's going to be that number two wide receiver. You got James Washington and Dante Moncrief, and while the Pittsburgh Steelers are kind of trying to work that out, we can see them running the football a little bit more the first couple of weeks, and that might hold back Ben Roethlisberger a little bit, because when Juju Smith-Schuster gets double teamed, it's going to be interesting seeing if he's going to trust Dante Moncrief or James Washington. So that's going to might hold him back in from a fantasy football standpoint there. So I have him at number 8 there. I still think he's going to end up putting up solid numbers. At number 7, I have Phillip Rivers, 4,208 passing yards in 2018, had 32 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Phillip Rivers is a guy who always puts up solid numbers from a fantasy football standpoint. You lost Tyrell Williams to free agency. He went to Oakland, but you had Mike Williams, so I think had a very good 2018 season. He had 10 touchdowns total last season, and I think we're going to see him having a breakout season in 2019 with Keenan Allen on the other side of him. And then also you have Hunter Henry coming back fully healthy at that tight end position. So I think Phillip Rivers is going to be in for a very big season from a fantasy football standpoint there. So I have him at number 7. At number 6, I have Matt Ryan. Now, a lot of videos I watched didn't really have Matt Ryan ranked that high. I think Matt Ryan is going to be in for a big season as well, because last season he had a very underrated season. He kind of put up MVP caliber numbers. He had 4,924 passing yards, 35 touchdowns passing, and only 7 interceptions. So that's very good when we look at his touchdown to interception ratio. And also got to look at how bad his offensive line was last season. His offensive line wasn't really that good. Atlanta spent a lot of time in the offseason and this year's NFL draft addressing the offensive line. So the offensive line for Atlanta should be a lot better. And also you got Mohamed Sanu, you got Julio Jones, and you got Calvin Ridley, and also Austin Hooper to throw to. So he has a lot of targets there, so that should improve his numbers as well from a fantasy football standpoint. And Matt Ryan could put up some mind-boggling numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up throwing for over 40 touchdowns this year, because he has a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball to throw to this year. So I have him at number 6. At number 5, I had Tom Brady. Now, I had Tom Brady at number 5 because this guy has this is probably the best receiving core that Tom Brady has had in a couple of years. You got Julian Edelman. You got Demaryius Thomas whenever he's available to play for the Patriots this season. You got N'Keal Harry, young rookie wide receiver there. And also, they also signed Cam Meredith, and Josh Gordon has recently applied for NFL reinstatement. So if he gets reinstated or not, we don't know. But I think Josh Gordon will end up playing sometime this year. But even if he doesn't end up playing, the New England Patriots are loaded at that wide receiver position. Cam Meredith, that's going to be interested to see how he works out this New England Patriots team. But this New England Patriots wide receiving core is very, very good. The best receiving core that the New England Patriots have had in a couple of seasons. And I think that's going to increase Tom Brady from a fantasy football standpoint. I have him at number 5 there because I think the quarterbacks ahead of him are going to have a chance to put up better numbers than him. But Tom Brady is easily a guy who could throw for 35 touchdowns. He can give you some good value there at that fantasy football standpoint. And he's really consistent. Now, last season, he did throw 11 interceptions, which is a little bit higher from what we're used to seeing from Tom Brady. But I think that number will end up dying down this season. And Tom Brady is normally a quarterback who's very reliable when it comes to not turning over the football as well. So Tom Brady is a guy who I have at number 5. And with the increase of talent that they have at the wide receiver position, we're going to see Tom Brady having a very solid season, or a very good season from a fantasy football standpoint in 2019. At number 4, I have Aaron Rodgers. Now, a lot of people normally have Aaron Rodgers in the top 3 when it comes to their fantasy football quarterback rankings. I have him at number 4, simply for the fact that Matt LaFleur is a guy who wants to put more emphasis around the football, and I don't think we're going to see Aaron Rodgers trying to win games by himself this year, strictly by passing the football now. So I think we're going to see him throwing the ball a little bit less than what we're accustomed to seeing him the last couple of seasons. And also you got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams back there, which is a pretty solid halfback duo as well. And also the wide receiver position is a little bit more of a question as well. They have a little bit more controversy at the wide receiver position than what the Steelers do. You got Davante Adams there as well, who is going to be one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football this year. He's going to get a lot of targets. But other than Davante Adams, you don't really know who's going to be that number 2, number 3 wide receivers for the Green Bay Packers this season. And you don't really know how consistent, how much consistency that the Green Bay Packers are going to have there out of that wide receiver position, other than Davante Adams. So I think that's kind of going to drop Aaron Rodgers' stock a little bit. Still think he's going to put up very big numbers this season, but I kind of have a little bit of my doubts about the receiving core, and also the fact that Green Bay is going to be running the ball a lot more than usual than what we've seen them running the last couple of seasons. So I have Aaron Rodgers at number 4. Still think he's going to end up putting very good numbers up this season. And also he only had 25 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, which was one of the lowest touchdown to interception ratios in the NFL last season. So you're not going to have the turnover aspect there for Aaron Rodgers. So you're going to have a guy who doesn't really turn the ball over that much. Well, you have the question of how big of emphasis is Matt LaFleur going to put on the running game, and how big is that going to affect Aaron Rodgers from a fantasy football standpoint there. And also the wide receiver position, other than Davante Adams, we don't really know who's going to be that number 2 and number 3 wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. So I have him at number 4. Still think Aaron Rodgers is going to put up very good numbers. But my top 3 here are the quarterbacks who I think are going to put up big numbers from a fantasy football standpoint. And I think these are mostly going to be the quarterbacks who we see getting taken off the board early from a lot of people from a fantasy football standpoint in their draft. I think these are going to be the 3 quarterbacks who end up getting taken first. At number 3, I have Andrew Luck. A lot of people are really high on Andrew Luck. In his first season under that Frank Reich system, had 4,593 passing yards, 39 touchdowns. But the big thing about him was the 15 interceptions. But I think that number should die down this season. You got Paris Campbell there. You got T.Y. Hilton. You got Eric Ebron. And you also got Marlon Mack, who's pretty solid when it comes to catching the football as well. So he has a lot of weapons to work with in the passing game. So Andrew Luck's a guy who I think is going to put up big numbers. I think he could end up being the best quarterback in fantasy football this season when it's all said and done. Even though I don't have him at number 1, you can make a legitimate argument that he could end up being the best quarterback in fantasy football this season, simply from how much that offensive line improved and pass protection. And we can only assume that offensive line is going to get better based on what we saw last season. And plus the receivers that he has and the passing game as well is going to help him out a lot. So we can see Andrew Luck have a big season. He could have over 40 touchdowns easily, and if he's able to lower that interception number just by a little bit, he can end up being the best quarterback in fantasy football in 2019. So I have him at number 3. At number 2, I had Drew Brees. 3,992 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Drew Brees, I have him at number 2. So they lost Mark Ingram and free agency. He was a little bit of a workhorse when it came to running the football. You got Alvin Kamara. He's a running back who can do a lot of things, specifically in the passing game as well. You also got Michael Thomas there, and you don't really know the couple of other receivers who they're going to have to step up. But I think Drew Brees is a guy who makes all of the guys around him a lot better, and I think Drew Brees is going to end up having a great season from a fantasy football standpoint. That's why I have him at number 2. A lot of people think we might see a little bit of a regression from Drew Brees this season, but I don't really see that. I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I might have him a little bit higher than what everybody else has him at, but I have him at number 2. I think he's accurate. He's going to be solid when it comes to not having a high touchdown interception ratio. You can always count on him being very solid when it comes to not turning the football over as well. And at number 1, I have Patrick Mahomes. Now, a lot of people don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to end up having the season that he had last year. I agree, but I still think he's going to put up phenomenal numbers. I still think that he's going to pass for nearly 5,000 yards again this season. He might not hit that 5,000 yard number exactly, but I think he'll be close to it. He might not have 50 touchdowns neither, but I think that he will be able to hit 40 touchdowns as well, or maybe higher. And then the 12 interceptions, that pretty much will stay the same. I think Patrick Mahomes, we're going to see him throwing the football a lot. The halfback game, the halfbacks that they have on the roster for Kansas City, I'm not really high on. I know Damian Williams had a pretty solid season last year when he was able to come in and fill in for Kareem Hunt, but I still think that Kansas City is going to be a more pass-heavy attack this season. They also drafted Mecole Hardman. You got Sammy Watkins there, and if Tyreek Hill is going to be available and he's going to be fully healthy, he's going to have an impact as well, and also you're going to have Travis Kelce. So you have a very deadly wide receiving group for Patrick Mahomes to throw to, and a very solid offensive line. So I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be the best quarterback in fantasy football this season. That's why I have him at number 1. So these are my top 10 fantasy football quarterbacks going into the 2019 NFL season. Let me know what you guys think about this list down in the comment section down below. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.